Joined now by our friend Frank Corrado, former Vancouver Canuck, now with TSN. Buddy, good to see you again. Thanks for making
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Our first chance to talk Bo Horvat trade to the Islanders with you. So first and foremost, your thoughts and impressions of the big deal.
Yeah, so it was funny. I was scheduled to do SportsCenter when that happened, and we had a couple talking points that day, and 10 minutes to air, we get word that the Horvat trade went down. So everything we were about to talk about just completely went out the window, and it was like first block, we got to talk Horvat. And it was cool because it was like instant reaction to it, right? We didn't have time to digest it and see what's the popular opinion and all that kind of stuff. So we just kind of sprung into it as we came up to the top of the hour. And okay, so I understand you want to get the trade done. I think from the Islanders' point of view, you probably want to get Horvat infused into the lineup as quick as you can because your team needs to make up ground. So I understand all that. The thing that I wondered about it from the Vancouver point of view is, could you have extrapolated more if you just held on a little longer and found a way to get more suitors involved? Like, people are going to want Horvat, but there is a delicate balance there because we've seen players in the past when it comes to free agency in this league overplay their hand, right? And they get burned by it. So I guess GMs are aware of that, and they say, okay, if I know I have a suitor and I want to make a deal, I'll go ahead and make that deal, and I'm happy with the return. So listen, I don't have an issue with that. The thing that, and I know the Vancouver fan base pretty well, the thing that stuck out to me is you cannot go into the media afterwards and say, it's basically like we got 3 first-round picks. It's not. 3 first-round picks is 3 first-round picks. You guys know as well as me, the Vancouver fan base, they're loyal, they're great fans, but guess what else they are? They're very intelligent, they're very well-read, and they're smart. And they know when someone is trying to sell them something that doesn't necessarily smell right. Just be honest and say, this is the best deal we thought we could get. We're happy with it. We're gonna see what this Ratu kid can turn into. We're very high on him. The first-round pick, we hope our scouting department can hit, a really good player. And Anthony Beauvillier fits a need for our team right now. I think that's a great way to put it. So but as far as the return, I also think if you gave permission, now we now know that Bo Horvat signed an extension and all that kind of stuff, but if you maybe gave them permission and the Islanders made that trade knowing that they were going to retain Horvat, could you have not maybe get something more out of that deal? And like all this being said, I don't have an issue with the return. I think it's, you got your pick, you got your young prospect, you got your player that helps you now. It's all good, but maybe you could have maximized it a little bit more.
Well, lowered the conditions is what I thought. Is you take that conditional pick and you make it top 8. If they win the lottery and they get top 8 or something like that. But top 13 is a little rich for me. I would have liked to seen that lowered a little bit. Maybe that's where you give them permission in exchange for lowering that. Well, condition.
And that's you don't think agents have conversations with GMs? They don't have to be formal. It's just more like, hey, out of curiosity, I got player X. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think of this guy? Like, what do those? It's not tampering. It's just agents they have to research, they have to canvas, so you kind of know what's going on. So why not put it out there and say we gave Bo and his agent permission, right? And then everyone knows, okay, now you're doing everything you possibly can to get the most out of this deal, because instead of wondering, will he, won't he, is it a rental? Now okay, he's getting traded, and he's getting traded with 7 years or 8 years attached to him after this. So we know that this was the best possible return you could get in that scenario.
Were Toronto fans talking about missing out on Horvat?
Not really. I think it's pretty rich for the organization here. Although he would be a great add, I think he's a phenomenal player. It doesn't seem like there was anything that missed the boat here. I think the focus here still remains on like a scoring winger, maybe a depth add as far as the forwards go, but there's more steam picking up here on the back end as far as a bigger, bulkier, heavier player, which I know the Vancouver Canucks have one of those guys that may be looking to get moved out and see what you can get for him.
Former Toronto Maple Leaf Luke Shen, right side defenseman. once upon a time, which Frankie knows a thing or two about. Were you surprised Horvat signed as quickly as he did, and what did you make of the deal?
I thought it was a good deal. Like, I think going into a season like he was heading into, him and his agent would have known what the best dollar amount would have been. And the fact that he's had such a good year, he's probably outplayed whatever that was at the beginning of the year. And, I feel like so what was the contract that was signed? It was Kevin Fiala was just signed, right? And Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to have to sign in this offseason. Different scenarios, but both those players were 0.68 points per game heading into the year that they needed to sign. Fiala was a point per game last year. He got just a touch under $8 million. Dubois, if he remains at a point per game this year, because he's a centerman, it's got to be $8 million plus. So Horvat, and I don't know if he's 0.68. I haven't looked or anything, but it's you can see the ballpark, right?
It's ish.
So it's in that ballpark, and he gets 8.5. I think that's a home run. I think that's a grand slam for him. He's got to be really happy with it. And if you think, like, this is the thing now, take the contract, take the money. You can always get moved. If you think the team sucks or you don't like it there, at least the money will always follow you. And we're seeing, like, we saw Huberdeau do it. We saw Weegar do it. We're seeing Bo Horvat do it. I think it's a great little piece of business from Horvat and his camp.
Intrinsic value, like, I don't feel like Bo Horvat should cost $8.5 million under the cap, but in market value,
that's the thing. Yeah, you're at
Yeah.
the mercy of the market. You really are, because it is what it is, and you have to get players signed. And I know Lou, kind of alluded to that in his comments where he said it's too long and it's too much money. And okay, we've been beating that drum to death. He's joking around. Like, it's a moment of levity. You know what I mean? He doesn't regret the contract. He really likes Horvat as a player, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it is somewhat true. When you look at the production, like 8.5 is it's a little rich, but what are you going to do? Or don't have players then. Don't have good players and finish.
He might like that plan, actually. Lou might like that.
Finish last place every year, and you don't have to pay anyone. Great.
How good is Frank Corrado, Blake, in his transition to media here? Over 9 years. Bo Horvat, point per game, 0.68. That includes
not on the screw.
No way.
On the nose. 0.68, gentlemen, and that includes the 2 games with the New York
I had no
Islanders.
idea.
So,
just putting that out there.
were you subject to Lou rules in Toronto?
Yeah, I was 100%. So the first day I got claimed, I was actually in Toronto. He calls me. And he goes, we're going to get you out here as soon as possible. I said, Lou, I'm actually in Toronto. I came to get my belongings, my car, just in case I cleared waivers. I was going to drive down to Utica. He goes, oh, well, do you want to just come to the rink and meet everyone right now? I said, absolutely. So I got over to the rink, and I had a little bit of stubble, a little more than I have today. I shook his hand. I met him, all that stuff. And I said, I'm aware of the rules. I'm going to shave as soon as I possibly can. And he looked me in the eye. He said, they're not rules, they're expectations. And I said,
Oh, wow.
I said, all right, it sounds good. So, yeah.
That's like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
They're not rules, they're expectations. So, so there was that, making sure, like, guys would have conversations in the dressing room, like, after the shower or something, like, I think I got to shave today. I don't know if I can get away with one more day. There was a player that got called up from the Marlies. This was late in the year, and Lou must have not been in a very good mood that day. But this is the player's fault, because everyone knew the rules, everyone knew the expectations. His hair was a little long, and his beard was a little more than a 5 o'clock shadow, and it was the morning of a game day. And Lou may or may not have told him, if you don't get a haircut and shave, do not show up to the game tonight. So, yeah, one of the call-ups. That was good times. That made for good entertainment.
Except in the playoffs. In the playoffs, all the expectations are diminished, and you're allowed to grow a playoff beard and all that sort of stuff. So I don't understand.
I know, right? The most important games of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you know about Anthony Beauvillier?
Listen, he's obviously a very talented player. He's been in the league a long time. I think he fits when you hear Jim Rutherford talk about, what they were looking for, a youngish guy with some NHL experience to see if maybe they can get more out of him. Like, let's be honest. He's played in an Islanders system that doesn't necessarily harvest the most amounts of offense and high octane hockey. So, maybe you can find a way to unlock a little more out of him. I think he skates really well. He's obviously got a knack for playmaking and, can put the puck in the back of the net. Like every NHL player, right? Like if you were going to do a scouting report of any player, oh, he's smart, he skates well, he can shoot the puck, he can make plays. Yeah, thanks, every single player. But I think the biggest difference here for him is like, can you unlock something that maybe the Islanders weren't able to? I don't know necessarily if he fits into the long-term plans for the Canucks. Like, I just don't know if the timelines and the age and that kind of stuff matches up, even the money that he might be able to earn. But in the time being, if you're not going for this, whole reset, I don't know what you even want to call it, because I hate calling it a retool, but you probably need a player like that in your lineup, and maybe Tocchet can find a way to get a little more offense out of him.
What's it like to know that you're in the doghouse of a coach?
Yeah.
And it might only be temporarily, because a guy like Andrei Kuzmenko had a great debut, or not debut, it was game 2 under Rick Tocchet. And then game 3 against the Rangers, he's benched effectively in the third period and is understandably part of this group that he says were the 5 guys. What is that? Is it motivation? Does it turn into fear? Does it actually make you regress as a player? What do you think is going through Andrei Kuzmenko's mind right now? As he gets set for another one? It
really depends on like your mental fortitude as a player. I found I was a guy, like if I was in the doghouse, I would just think about that on a cycle in my head over and over. It didn't do me any favors. I would kind of just get caught up in it, and I was thinking about, how do I get out of this situation? How do I not feel this like it's like a goal-based thing, whereas I should have been thinking about process-based, right? Like if I can make a really good breakout pass here, if I can, string together a few good shifts, stuff like that, it's like that's going to get you out of the doghouse, not just thinking about how do I get out of it. So it's a struggle in the moment, because you have this like tunnel vision blinders on where it's all you can think of, it's all you want to do. But the really good players, like the guys who are very mentally strong, they're the guys who can go out there. A, they can make mistakes and forget about them and not dwell on it. And B, when adversity hits, like for Kuzmenko, it's almost like the guys who are naive to it, the guys who seem like they don't necessarily care, if you can channel a little bit of that, and it's not cockiness, it's not that you don't care, it's just that you know that getting wrapped up in it is not going to do you any favors. It is difficult, though. It's much easier said than done. Like, I know I've had coaches. I had a coach in Vancouver who I just, like Willie, I couldn't do much right with Willie. And it was the same with Babcock. I couldn't do much right. And that's cool. Like I'm not a player you think can help your team, and it's all that's fine. But you almost get this feeling of like, it's like a pit in your stomach. And for me, it kind of just felt like the rink was like closing in around me. And it was almost like I could, when you just do things, you don't think about them, right? But anytime I touched the puck, I was really, really thinking about having the puck on my stick. And that's no way to play, right? Like, you just want to play instinctual. You don't want to think. And so that'll be the challenge for him now. Like the NHL, we've talked about it. It's so unforgiving, right? Like mistakes can compound and pile up on you. And so, with getting right back at it, it's like, just forget about that. Go play whatever you think makes you good. Ask someone what makes you good and go and do that, and focus on the process that is involved in that, not the objective of getting yourself out of the doghouse.
Like golf swing. If you're thinking golf swing, you're probably not playing very well. If you're just swinging a club, you're probably doing a little better.
Sometimes you gotta get the camera out behind your golf swing and face it head on and say, what the hell am I doing? Like, what is that? Yeah.
Lastly here, Frankie, to bring it full circle on 3 first-round picks, the actual first-round pick they're getting, and you're covering a lot of junior hockey there, I mean, it could be as good as the 13th overall pick. Maybe it slides to somewhere in the early 20s, but everyone seems to think they're going to get a heck of a player there if they get this Islanders pick.
Like covering junior hockey this year, doing the CHL, we've got a good opportunity to see some of the players that are going to be getting drafted, and it's like The talent level really goes deep into this draft. And whereas last year we saw a lot of the players that were really affected by COVID and the shutdowns, like it essentially took away 2 of those prime years for those players. This year it seems like these guys kind of are on the up and up out of that. And if it's 13, you have to take the lists and combine them, right? Because there's the North American and the European, like a big power forward like Barlow or the Quinton Musty kid from the OHL. And then you guys know out west, like a guy like Zach Benson, probably going to be a little bit higher. Jaeger, probably in that same vicinity. But you never know. Like, you never know what teams value. So, there's going to be a really good player with that pick. And so now it's up to the scouting department to identify who's going to be in that situation, but pick the best one. Like, really just pick the best player. Don't just go for, we think we need a power forward or we think we need this. Like, you have to go with the best player. You've seen what happens when teams decide, well, we think in our organization matrix, we could use a guy that fits this mold in a couple of years. Forget about it. See, it just changes. Like, the league changes so much. You have to pick the best player. So, we'll see what they can come up with, but they'll be getting a really good player.
Marvelous stuff, my friend. Thank you for the time here today. We'll catch up next week, Frank.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
this.